Moving on with our bulletin, the South African Human Rights Commission continues with hearings into unfair discrimination, sexism and racism at UNISA. Let's go live.
They lower staff morale of any investigation that they had done to date in the university. And finally, deliberate actions were recommended to correct the situation. It also came to my knowledge that Mukuzangwe was abusing the leave provisions of UNISA by expecting staff to provide reasons for taking leave, by withholding approval of leave until the very last minute, and by only approving leave to employees confirming that they would be available at any time during their leave for work purposes. On one occasion, an employee's leave approval was withheld until approximately 4 hours before her flight abroad departed. I had to intervene on that occasion, and whereafter I also implemented a rule that all leave in future would be approved by me to prevent any abuse. It also came to my knowledge that Mukuzangwe was threatening not to confirm the permanent appointment of staff in the department for no reason at all, and in some circumstances she simply failed to approve the appointments. For example, it happened with Ms. Mkaku. An investigation confirmed that approximately 15 staff members' appointments were not confirmed. It also became apparent that Mukuzangwe failed to have discussion with her staff members, alerting them to the fact that their performance was not up to standard while she was contemplating not to confirm the appointments. I had to implement the approval of these appointments, but only after Mukuzangwe made it clear that she objected to it, notwithstanding her not following correct procedures. At this stage, the relationship between Mukuzangwe and me also started deteriorating. I need to mention that all steps that I implemented were done after providing Professor Moche with all information and with her approval. It also happened that Mukuzangwe increasingly opposed my managerial decisions. I now speak to other failures in relation to the accreditations of qualifications. During 2016, further information came to the fore, confirming that Mukuzangwe failed in her duties to ensure the proper accreditation, registration, and approval of qualifications. The BCom law degree, for example, was not aligned to the Higher Education's Qualifications Sub-Framework, the HEQSF. And when I raised it, Mukuzangwe indicated that I am wrong. I had it investigated, which confirmed that I was correct. Mukuzangwe blamed her staff, alleging that they were not supporting her, whilst it was her duty to ensure compliance. In one meeting, she confronted one of her managerial staff members, Mrs. van Klug, in such an inappropriate manner that Mrs. van Klug left the meeting. There were also other qualifications where Mukuzangwe failed to comply with her duties and functions. Every time I requested internal investigations which confirmed my fears, and every time I reported it to Professor Moche. The result was that UNISA technically was offering unaccredited qualifications which potentially exposed UNISA to severe consequences. Often, Mukuzangwe would not give her cooperation during these investigations, and instead was fighting with me and her staff and without acknowledging her mistakes. Mukuzangwe during this period also continued victimizing people in the DPAR. I am not listing all the incidents where information was received by me of Mukuzangwe's victimization, intimidation and bullying her staff, as it is well documented, inter alia, in the reports of the official investigations that I refer to herein. I also need to mention at this juncture that Mukuzangwe's conduct of bullying, threatening and intimidating DPAR staff was reported by some of the staff members to the Vice-Chancellor and the Pro-Vice-Chancellor at that time, as far back as 2013, until Mukuzangwe's suspension referred to below. Mr. Chairperson, I just need to reiterate that the first time that this came to the knowledge of the VC was already in 2013. I read in his evidence before the Commission that he was not aware of any claims of harassment, but there is actual evidence that this was reported to him as early as 2013 already. The situation becomes so bad that some of the staff members in the DPAR were contemplating suicide, and a number of them were on psychological treatment, and in one case, even psychiatric treatment. To protect these employees, and in the best interest of UNISA and the DPAR, I requested the assistance of UNISA's Employment Relationships Department, who decided to appoint Professor Steinman, an industrial psychologist, for further investigation and assistance. Professor Steinman was appointed during on or about September 2016 to conduct the investigation, and she submitted her report on about the 16th of February 2017. Again, I do not attach Professor Steinman's full report here too, but I will ensure that it is available when I give my evidence should the investigative hearing panel wish to refer to it. It is, however, apparent from this report that 1, Professor Steinman interviewed staff members of the DPAR. 2, several staff members informed Professor Steinman that they complained towards me as well as the Vice-Chancellor about the bullying behavior of Mukuzangwe. 3, whilst the focus of the investigation by Professor Steinman was the issue of the workplace bullying and the charges of gross negligence in the performance of Mukuzangwe's duties, allegations of fraud, corruption, and bid rigging by Mukuzangwe was also raised with and mentioned to Professor Steinman by the DPAR staff. Regarding the issues of alleged fraud, corruption, and bid rigging, it is important that I mention that Professor Steinman already during October 2016 and prior to the conclusion of her investigation forwarded a letter to me dated 21 October 2016, making me aware of DPAR staff members during interviews disclosing these issues to her. A copy of this letter is attached hereto as Annexure PHH4. The January 2017 report of Professor Steinman in detail records information disclosed to her, findings and recommendations she made to UNISA. Part 6 of Professor Steinman's report, dealing with the final findings and recommendations, is attached hereto as Annexure PHH5. Its content is self-explanatory, but it is clear from these findings that Mukuzangwe made herself guilty of harassing, bullying, threatening, and victimization of staff members in the DPAR. It will also be noted, particularly at page 75 of the report, that Professor Steinman concluded that Malchus was Mukuzangwe's accomplice, enabling Mukuzangwe to enforce an environment where staff worked hard and long hours without being remunerated for the extra work, and where they were discriminated against should they refuse to work the additional hours. In addition, Professor Steinman also found that Malchus participated in the bullying and victimization of DPAR staff, as well as the bullying, victimization, and humiliation of DPAR stakeholders. Because Professor Steinman indicated Mukuzangwe's possible involvement in irregular activities, including inter alia fraud and corruption, UNISA's Internal Audit Department, on or about the 3rd of November 2017, appointed Duja Consulting Pty Limited, an external forensic investigations firm, to investigate the fraud and corruption allegations. Again, I am not attaching the report here too, but it will be available at the hearing if the investigative panel wish to consider it. I, however, attach Chapter 7 of the Duja Consulting report here too as Annexure PH86, confirming that it was recommended to UNISA to take appropriate action against Mukuzangwe for alleged corrupt and fraudulent conduct. Professor Steinman also recommended in her report that appropriate action be taken against Mukuzangwe as well as Malchus due to them bullying, harassing, and victimizing staff members of the DPAR. I now deal with Mukuzangwe's suspension. On or about the 10th of November 2016, UNISA's Disciplinary and Incapacity Enforcement Section, the Directorate Employment Relations and Wellness, recommended Mukuzangwe's suspension pending the finalization of an investigation into her conduct. On the 21st of November 2016, Mukazangwe was notified of the intention to suspend her, and after her attorneys presented bold denials of the allegations against Mukazangwe, and after consideration thereof by the Vice-Chancellor, she was suspended on 2 December 2016 for a period of 90 days. On the 3rd of March 2017, Mukazangwe, in terms of UNISA's disciplinary code and procedure, the suspension was extended for another 90 days, with a further extension during June 2017. In terms of the initial suspension, Mukazangwe was not allowed to enter UNISA premises and or contact any of the employees of the university, unless authorized to do so by the Acting Director, Employee Relations and Wellness, Dr. S.A. Williams, in writing. On 19 April 2017, the suspension conditions of Mukazangwe were relaxed after she made representations in order not to prejudice her in her studies by allowing her entry to the UNISA library and to access certain UNISA employees Mukazangwe wanted to include as participants in her research study. The relaxation, however, was further subject hereto that Mukazangwe was only allowed to interact with employees with prior approval from the Acting Director, Employee Relations and Wellness of the Department of Human Resources. Mukazangwe was specifically made aware thereof that failure to abide by the conditions would lead to revocation of the limited relaxation of the precautionary suspension. The Vice-Chancellor's limited relaxation letter of suspension dated 19 April 2017 is attached hereto as Annexure PHH7. On 29 May 2017, Mukazangwe breached her suspension conditions in that she was found working on the 4th floor of UNISA's 2 van Wyk building, sitting in the office of the personal assistant of Dr. Marinki Madiope. Mukazangwe obtained no prior approval from the Acting Director, Employment Relations and Wellness of the Department of Human Resources for this purpose. Mukazangwe also threatened staff members of the DPAR on or about 29 May 2017 with dismissal upon her resumption of duty. Consequently, the Vice-Chancellor, by way of notice of suspension dated 9 June 2017, attached as Annexure PHH8, withdrew the relaxation, advising Mukazangwe that she may not enter UNISA premises or contact any of the employees without the authority of the Acting Director, Employee Relations and Wellness, Dr. S.A. Williams. I now deal with the charges charging Mukazangwe with misconduct. Prior to receipt of the report by Duja Consulting, Mukazangwe was furnished with a charge sheet containing 9 charges, which excluded any charges relating to fraud and or corruption. Mukazangwe was on executive development leave from or on about the 1st of September 2016 until 30 November 2016, and consequently the disciplinary hearing pertaining to these 9 charges could not proceed and be finalized. After receipt of the Duja Consulting report, further charges in respect of the recommendations by Duja Consulting was added, and on or about 10 October 2017, Mukazangwe was furnished with a charge sheet containing 13 charges, covering allegations of dereliction of duty, insubordination, bullying and victimization, and breaching of policies. Annexure PHH9 is a copy of the charge sheet dated 10 October 2017. It will be noted on the first page of this charge sheet that it records the date of the disciplinary hearing as the 22nd and the 23rd of March 2018. This was the date set after numerous postponements during the 2017 of the disciplinary hearing. I, however, confirm that the charges throughout and after it was changed from 9 to 13 charges remained the same. The first disciplinary hearing was initially scheduled for the 22nd of June 2017. The hearing was postponed on that occasion because Mukazangwe claimed that she had no time to answer to the charges. A pattern thereafter developed where Mukazangwe, every time the hearing was scheduled, would present some or other reason why she could not attend the hearing. Consequently, throughout 2017, UNISA was not able to finalize the disciplinary hearing.
As a matter of fact, Mukuzangwe has not even pleaded to any of these charges yet. I need to point out that an external commissioner of the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation, and Arbitration, established in terms of the Labour Relations Act 66 of 1905, has been appointed to chair Mukuzangwe's disciplinary hearing. At the end of 2017, Mukuzangwe's disciplinary hearing was postponed to the beginning of 2018 due to a pregnancy. On or about the 21st of December 2017, the Vice-Chancellor in an email indicated to me that Mukuzangwe and Ms. Ngota, who was also on suspension, must return to office. I replied to the Vice-Chancellor indicating that I regarded his instruction as unlawful, considering that the uplifting of Mukuzangwe's suspension would have meant a failure to protect the employees in the DPAR. And I need to emphasize, I received an email back from the Vice-Chancellor wherein he agreed with me. The Vice-Chancellor gave an instruction to Professor Moche and me to ensure the completion and finalization of the disciplinary hearing of Mukuzangwe. Early in January 2018, arrangements were made to finalize the hearing, but Mukuzangwe in the meantime approached the CCMA, claiming that her suspension was unfair and ought to have been set aside. Because of concerns to successfully defend the alleged unfair suspension case, a compromise was reached that Mukuzangwe would return to UNISA and be seconded to another department. Mukuzangwe also claimed that she could not work with me anymore. I made it clear that she could not return to my department because of the bullying, victimization, and harassment of staff in the department. I, however, made it clear that I expected the disciplinary hearing to go ahead until conclusion. During this period, and whilst I was attempting to manage the situation by ensuring that staff members reporting to Mukuzangwe were given the protection that they deserved, Malchus informed me that she would not comply with my instructions and that she would continue having contact with Mukuzangwe. During this period, I also received information from staff members of the DPAR that Mukuzangwe and Malchus indicated that they will get me, and that Malchus also called me a white racist. To prevent an aggravation of the situation, I informed the staff that I was not going to take any action based on what they informed me. On 22 February 2018, and to my shock, I received an SMS from Michael Ramotlo, who represented UNISA in Mukuzangwe's unfair suspension dispute, advising me that the Vice-Chancellor had instructed him, Ramotlo, to withdraw all charges against Mukuzangwe. The decision to withdraw the charges was taken without consulting me as Mukuzangwe's immediate manager. I was also not provided with reasons why the charges were withdrawn. And I understand that the Vice-Chancellor also did not discuss this with Professor Moche, neither with the Vice Principal Operations and Transformation, Ms. Liana Chrysel, on whose portfolio all these issues are dealt with. Mr. Chairperson, I must please here just state it and make it very clear that there is actually no relationship between me and Ms. Liana Chrysel. It has been claimed either that she's my sister or my daughter or my cousin. On 26 February 2018, and while technically still on suspension, Mukuzangwe reported at the DPAR. I was contacted by staff members of the DPAR who mentioned their dissatisfaction to me. I went to the area where the DPAR offices are located on the 8th floor of the 2 Van Wyk building. As I was entering the offices, I met Ms. Marcela Mukua, an administrative assistant on her way out, who was visibly upset and in such a state that she could not talk to me. She was visibly traumatized, was crying and shaking. I need to mention that Ms. Mukua was one of the first DPAR staff members who initially complained to the Vice-Chancellor and me about the victimization, harassment and bullying by Mukuzangwe. I told Ms. Mukua to calm down and to leave the UNISA campus. This is the modus operandi which I also followed on previous occasions where the presence of Mukuzangwe resulted in staff members being upset and to protect them. I was severely upset with the situation, considering that it was reported a few days prior to the 26th of February 2018 that the condition of Ms. Makua, who suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder, had stabilized with the assistance of her psychologist, who indicated that further counseling was still necessary. At that moment, it felt to me as if all the hard work to stabilize the DPAR was undone. And when I questioned Mukuzangwe about her presence in the DPAR, I was upset. I told her that she had to leave, whereafter an argument ensued, during which Mukuzangwe told me that I think I'm untouchable, that she will charge me and that I will be taught a lesson. Because of the disruption which Mukuzangwe's presence caused in the DPAR, I told the remaining staff members to leave the campus as they were not required to be in the office while Mukuzangwe was present. Mukuzangwe failed to adhere to my request to leave the campus and to vacate the office. In fact, she went into the office and was joined by Malchas. I told Malchas that she was insubordinate because she was acting contrary to my instructions that she may not have direct contact with Mukuzangwe, because Mukuzangwe technically was still on suspension. I thereafter wrote a letter to the Vice-Chancellor airing my dissatisfaction with the state's situation. Later, I learned that there was an agreement in terms of which UNISA withdrew the charges against Mukuzangwe. This agreement was only signed on 2 March 2017, and thus after Mukuzangwe, in breach of her suspension conditions, entered the UNISA premises. On 26 February 2018, Mukuzangwe wanted to remove furniture from the office that she previously occupied in the DPAR, including a fridge and some other objects. I gave instructions that she was not allowed to remove anything unless it was done through the normal UNISA approval process. Notwithstanding my instructions, she continued removing certain items. Mukuzangwe again returned on or about 6 March 2018, and she insisted that she wanted to remove the fridge and some other items. She was accompanied by persons from UNISA State Department to assist her with the removal of the items. When the staff contacted me, I instructed them to lock the offices, whereafter I phoned security to accompany me to the offices of the DPAR. On my arrival, security was already there. Without being upset and actually being very calm, I told Mukuzangwe that please note that you are not supposed to be here. Mukuzangwe was clearly not going to cooperate, and I then requested her to see the documentation which she had and which apparently authorized the removal. She refused to give it to me. My further request to see the documentation allegedly authorizing the removal was also refused, and at some stage I did try to grab the document, but was prevented from doing so. More security arrived, whereafter Mukuzangwe was not allowed to remove any item from the offices whereafter she left. In the meantime, Professor Moche also arrived. She had a look at the document allegedly authorizing the removal. Professor Moche, after considering it, agreed that Mukuzangwe was not allowed to remove any of the assets. I requested Professor Moche also to instruct Mukuzangwe that she is not allowed to come into the offices of DPAR to prevent further traumatization of the staff members, which Professor Moche did. After I learned of the withdrawal of the charges against Mukuzangwe, I informed the Vice-Chancellor that he could not...
The South African Human Rights Commission continues with hearings into unfair discrimination, sexism and racism at the University of South Africa. We heard of leave approvals and abuse that was seen in that regard. Also the appointment of 15 staff members and that those appointments not being confirmed. Also discussions around failures in relation to accreditation and other issues. But stay tuned to Afro Worldview for further developments.